It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time. The cube. LeBron left to the circle, left to the lane. Gonna go all the way and hammer it home. Everybody on their feet. Sends it for three. Oh, are you kidding me? It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship.
We wanted to go in a different direction. We wanted a different approach.
60.
The Shoot Around.
Welcome back to the club. Looking forward to talking Cavs basketball.
Yeah, what a week. We can talk about how we felt about the team's continued bad play and also break down how Kevin Love could and should be on another team next season.
The Cavs hosted the Pacers on May 10th and were able to keep the game competitive, but ultimately lost 111-102. Domantas Sabonis led the Pacers with 21 points and 20 boards, and backup shooting guard Keelan Martin had a career-high 25 points. Colin Sexton and Isaac Okoro led the Cavs with 25 and 22 points apiece, but the team struggled in the second half, getting outscored 42-58. They were only able to play 8 players, and you could tell they just ran out of gas, kind of like this season.
On May 9th, the Mavs visited Cleveland and were led by Tim Hardaway Jr., who scored 25 points, and Josh Richardson, who got another 20, as Dallas stampeded the Cavs 124-97, in spite of the fact that Luka Doncic was ejected in the third quarter for a punk move of hitting Sexton below the belt.
On May 7th, the first of the 2-game series against the Mavericks, Luka Doncic scored 24 points in 23 minutes, and Tim Hardaway Jr. added 20 more, as Dallas came out with an easy 110-90 victory over Cleveland. This was the first of 2 brutal losses, as the Cavs only scored 37 points in the first half. In true form, they continued to shoot poorly from 3, making only 20% from downtown, a disgusting 6 of 29. In a valiant effort, Sexton had 27 points, and Jetty Osman added another 22, but got little else from the rest of the team. Kevin Love, mysteriously absent.
The Cavs hosted the Portland Trailblazers on May 5th and got walloped, losing 141-105. Damian Lillard had 32 points and 9 assists, and Enes Kanter added another 18 points with 13 rebounds. The Cavs' leading point getters were Kevin Love, who had 18 points, and Dean Wade, who added another 16. A quick side note, Cleveland was outscored by 45 points in 26 minutes that Kevin Love was on the court. So yeah, this game happened. So the season is winding down, and this is another week of losses. Was there a game that you wanted to focus on, Adam?
Not really. I think because of the way each week has gone by and we're on our 8th straight loss, I think it's best to just kind of overview the week in general, and we'll just kind of cover the highlights and most of the lowlights and move on as quickly as possible. How about that?
That sounds like a perfect response.
All right, so where do you want to start? Hit me up. What did you notice from this week of tragedy, travesty, awfulness, destruction, season-ending, losing?
I would say something that was really cool about these few games, all kidding aside, because we do love this team a lot. I really am enjoying how Isaac Okoro is coming along. He only had lower end double-digit points in a few of these games, but against the Pacers, he looked really dominant at times and is trying new things. He does have I think it's kind of a great step back 3 right now, and I hope that he can maybe get a little bit more lift on it, but it's kind of a surprising trick that he has. And I think that he isn't always doing what he did at the beginning of the season, where he's going to fake the pass and go right to the bucket. He is actually finding some players. He had a great sequence in the Pacers game where Sexton got Allen the ball, and then Allen kind of just had a little back pass behind him to Okoro, like right in the shooting pocket, and Okoro hit a great 3-pointer. That's been kind of a nice little silver lining, is just to see that a guy who's a rookie who could clearly kind of let the season slip away and not progress in any capacity and kind of plateau, he's still making strides, which is nice to see. He is fitting what we had heard about him, that he's a hard worker. To be honest with you, this week was just extra tough. They just keep doing what they've been doing the last few weeks, where they're having bad third quarters, they're having poor shooting nights from behind three, turnovers. It is a Pan's labyrinth of bad basketball play that's leading them to these really tough losses. They're not even tough losses. They're brutal losses, because tough would imply a tough loss to me was the Pacers game. The rest of these are, I feel they're more brutal. And I would assume most of Cavs Twitter, from what I'm seeing, are probably agreeing with that angle as well. I'm not downtrodden in the sense of like, I don't want to burn it down. We can talk about JB at other times. There are things that I disagree with him about, but I'm not super like, oh, the coach is horrible, the GM's horrible, the team is horrible. It's not anything like that. It's more of like, I just wish that they would play closer to how they did at the beginning of the season, because I really do think that they would be closer to the 10th seed if they were able to do that.
I absolutely agree. I think that the brightest spot of the last 2-3 weeks of losing has been Okoro, and how he's stepped up and gotten the chance to show us what I think he's been working on outside of game time. Because clearly that step back three and a few other things he's added to his repertoire, you can tell that he's practicing when they're not out on the court, and he's getting more confident in those shots and therefore taking those shots during the game. It's great to see that the coaching staff and the players are encouraging him to take those shots. I think what I noticed about Okoro early on, and one of the things that I knew would endear me, I would take a liking to him fairly quickly, was because you could tell that he was out on the court going, okay, what's best for the team? There were many nights where he clearly could have scored more. He could have shot more, at least that. And he deferred. He was passing the ball, looking for the other guys that are the superstars of the team and should be the first, second, and third looks before him. He hasn't reached that status yet. But the last couple of weeks, I think he's quietly making a case. And I hope the Cavs are paying attention, because what does this team look like going into next season with possibly this starting four, the core four players of Okoro, Allen, Sexton, and Garland? If they could just stay healthy, they're young, and they could play with each other for another 5-6 seasons easy. So we'll get more into Allen and other situations at a later date. But for now, that's the pie in the sky, I think. Right now, Okoro is a wonderful bright spot in the darkness. However, as you stated, what's plaguing us the most? I'll go over stats a little more as we continue to dive in, but you're right. The turnovers are a major thing. Almost every loss, we've got 15 plus turnovers. And typically the team we're facing has maybe 7 or 8, maybe 10. So we're definitely outdoing teams in that regard. In the Pacers game, you mentioned them. I know a statistic off the top of my head immediately. They had 13 blocks in that game. We had 2. That's not the biggest standout, because a block doesn't necessarily mean that you lost the ball. Just thinking about how we've been dominated fully on both sides of the court these last 8 or 9 games, it's difficult basketball to watch because there's no hope to hold on to. There's not any side of the ball that you can say, yeah, well, we had a good game tonight in this regard. There's only a few players that are typically stepping up to the plate, and the rest of it, we're just kind of seeing the team fall apart. And we'll go into it even more, but, the Kevin Love experiment is not working out. And we saw him mysteriously absent in a game. We look at this every day. Did you find anything about why it wasn't there? I never read anything about why it wasn't there.
He apparently did have, because he bumped knees in the Portland game. So supposedly that is why he was held out. But that's kind of, okay. I mean, you bump knees as a professional athlete and a basketball player on a regular basis. So
yeah, I would have expected that he would have missed a few more games after that. We know Kevin Love's MO. If he's hurt for a while. Yeah. He's not just, I had a little bruise and I'm back tomorrow. That's not him. So, okay. That's tough. That's a tough one to follow up on, because, where do you go from there?
Well, but your okay says it all. Yeah, okay.
Okay. It's not uncommon for the NBA to sit players and have bogus reasons on the injury report. For me, when it is a serious thing, there's some media talk about it. There's more than one outlet that is talking about it. I just kind of realized he wasn't going to play that night. And I went, oh. And that's how much it doesn't matter anymore. Kevin Love's not this superstar that we need. In a lot of ways, he's this misfit toy that you really need to get rid of, because on the games that he's not there, even if you're playing 7 or 8 guys, you're like, yeah, well, this is the best we have. 3-4 weeks ago, when we were having our pie in the sky, hey, what could happen here if we just win X amount of games? We could sneak our way into the playoffs this season. That's not going to happen now. We know that. But what we did say, even back then, was that this particular week, this past week of games, we were most likely going to lose 3 out of 4. We never expected to beat the Mavs, especially with back-to-back games. And then the fact that we played Portland, really the Pacers were the only team that we were hoping we'd have a chance, and we got close. But once again, we had a 17-point third quarter. So many of these games, we shot 35%, 33% from 3. We had at least 10, 15 turnovers, and we score under 20 points in at least one quarter, sometimes multiple quarters. We're tanking, but it doesn't feel like we made the choice to. It just feels like everybody is sliding into this situation and there's nothing that can be done about it.
The Chase Down podcast, Justin Rowan on that podcast had mentioned the losses are going to come with this team, basically because he was looking at how we still have injury issues. And so he was suspecting that we would still have injury problems the rest of the season. The schedule in May specifically was going to get even really super tough. I think it's a little bit more frustrating in the sense of we're having these losses without Garland. We're losing even more bodies, and we're still having some solid play occasionally. Like we're doing well in a quarter here and a quarter there, but you can just tell that the team is in a different place right now, which I think that's the thing that the eye test of seeing a little bit of the body language. I think Sexton is always kind of the little engine that could, like, he's always going to be a try hard, which is great. But at times he still needs to work on kind of bringing the rest of the players along with that. And part of that is he doesn't know these guys as well who he's playing with. I don't know how much of that has been asked of him yet, because Sexton has been the primary scorer for this team the last 3 years, but he still has had Kevin Love on the team. And I'm wondering, with kind of passing the baton, if Sexton is more of a vocal leader this year only. I don't know how much of that he was last year, and obviously his rookie year, he had a lot of growing pains. The eye test and watching these games, the frustrating part of the way that they're losing is we really have to drill down deep to see, like, oh, Okoro's coming along. And there's a couple other bright spots of certain plays or maybe a quarter, but not having a win means that they don't have a complete game, which is just, it's hard to digest right now. It's like a bad salad.
You know, it's bad when you've lost so many games and there's been so much hope erased from the season, what was left of the season, that now there's rumors coming out of the locker room and within the media that some players are unhappy and that a vast majority of the team doesn't want to be around next season. And I don't believe that those reports are true. It may be a few people that feel that way, but I don't think it's as large as they say. But it just goes to show what happens when you have a string of losses like this. It makes it almost impossible to believe in a future with a team moving forward playing this way. And I've quietly been afraid of this for over a month, watching us let teams score 38, 40 points in a quarter, sometimes the first quarter. What a way to start a game. The defensive pride that I saw in this team at the start of the season has been non-existent since the All-Star break. I don't see a team out there fighting to stop the other team. We've adopted this mentality that we'll just eventually outshoot them. But we don't make our shots. we're not a very good shooting team. So if we don't have our defense, we have nothing. And when I look at the last 2 games alone, so Pacers and then the second Mavericks game, total 32 assists for the Pacers and 33 assists for the Mavericks. So 65 assists. It's one thing to lose when one guy takes on your team and scores 60 or whatever, a Kobe or something like that. Like, that's a fluke and we celebrate those things. But in this way, you allowed a team to step on you, 2 teams to step on you. You gave up almost 110 assists in the last 4 games. So that's another stat that when you look at it, it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it just means, it just goes to show how efficiently the other team is moving the ball on you and scoring easily. Assists are an easy way to score in the NBA. That's why typically the higher the assist total you have, you're going to win, or certainly the more points you're going to have, and that typically means you're going to win. It's been very difficult to watch these teams kind of run the score up and certain stat lines on us as if they mean nothing to us, and in hopes that, well, we'll have 4 or 5 guys go off too, and then we'll just keep it close. That's not the kind of basketball that I enjoy, and it's part of the reason why this stuff has almost been unwatchable. It's not just losing games, it's being run out of the building. We don't even look like we belong there.
Let's go to the tape.
This season has hit another level of bizarre, as Kevin Love, who made a commitment to his Cavs teammates after his Toronto idiocy, went on the Posted Up with Chris Haynes podcast and had this to say, quote, "Whether it be at the end of my career, whether it be in 6 months, or whatever it may be, if I was wearing a Portland jersey, that's special. That's playing at home. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for the team to move on from this guy. I think he still has something left in the tank, but he clearly wants the ability to play for a team that isn't rebuilding, and I don't think he should be in Cleveland. Are you prepared to only see Kevin Love at a retirement ceremony after the end of the season?"
Well, it's another week, and it's another week of us talking about Kevin Love. Sorry, Kevin, if you ever hear this podcast. I have a feeling that you probably can't take this type of criticism very well, and you'll just turn it off. So I apologize that you won't hear our entire take. We knew from the jump, when he signed that contract, it was probably not going to work out in favor of the Cavaliers. Long term, it was most likely going to make it harder for us to move him, harder to move on from him if we had to, and more of a liability with the fact that you can't really rebuild a team with a guy that isn't out on the court. He's an injury-prone player. It's part of the reason why it's going to be hard to move him now. Even if he can somehow emerge from the shell that is himself and be something more resembling of what he was, I don't know how many teams in the league need him. I can't even really think of a playoff-bound team right now that would want him. And it's because there's more than one issue going on with Kevin right now. His mental issues, right? His depression and some of the other things that he says he battles with. It's the mental state. And then it's the physical side, where he's had difficult injuries, nothing devastating, but certainly nagging and difficult enough that kept him out of the game and kept him away from playing full seasons for the last several years. I imagine all of that has taken its toll on him. You can see how frustrated he is out on the court. But he's in interviews now saying he's only 60-70%. If you're almost at 50% of yourself, you shouldn't even be out there this season. You've already admitted that. But then you have a bogus play where you slap the ball away and lose a possession. Not only that, but then immediately have the team score on you. And watching that replay doesn't help his argument, because it looks like not only did he not care that it happened, that he did it, but then he just kept walking and watched them do it. It's not like he went, "Oh, my bad," or ran like a person would if they were surprised that that was the outcome and they didn't intend for that outcome to be that way. And that led me to watching a video on AM Hoops YouTube channel, which actually pinpointed some things that I had been unaware of from previous seasons, where Kevin has kind of proven and shown that this is his MO, that he throws little fits. He's not really a team player. He's barked at Sexton on several occasions in ways that were inappropriate on the court. He probably got Beeline fired in some of the moves that he made where he was not supporting the coach. I don't see a guy that has been team first. And yet in his apology, he says he'll ride or die with us. right? He's Cleveland all the way. And a few days later, he was on a podcast saying that wouldn't it be special to end his career in Portland? What do you want, Kevin? Which one are you focusing on? And I understand LeBron started the whole trend of wouldn't it be cool to go home and play? You've never once in your whole career talked about wanting this. And frankly, the idea that every player gets to say that wouldn't it be special to go home and play for the town that I came from, right? That's not what LeBron did. LeBron already played for the team in the closest town of where he was from. He started his career there and then he left. So coming back here is different than, oh, I'd love to play for my hometown. Well, you haven't. You've played for us, and barely, the last couple of seasons, and now you're acting as if on one side of your mouth, this organization, this team, that's all that matters to you. Not the fans, by the way, because if we don't play on the court with him, then he doesn't care about our opinion, apparently. That was in his apology. When you ask me if I'm prepared to see him at retirement ceremony, I probably won't watch that. What he's doing is souring the memory of what made me enjoy the time that we've had with him with the Cavs. And he should understand, if any of these guys are fans of any sport, how do you feel about a player that's taken $140 million from your team and barely played for the last 3 seasons and then comes out on the court and acts like a whining little brat? I have no sympathy for you, Kevin, in this situation. I want you to be a professional and fulfill the obligations that you've committed yourself to with this team. And if you don't want to stay here, then find a way to work with the organization to get out. Because right now, you're an albatross around our neck. Colin and I, we've talked about privately, we see this continuing on into next season in a very poisonous way that could lead to having to kind of break apart what they're building, simply because they can't get rid of this guy.
I think it's also important to note that we really did give Love the benefit of the doubt in the sense of when he came back just to see what would happen on the court. My expectations weren't high. I don't think either of our expectations were going to be that high. Yes, the players have improved a little bit in their shooting and some of their offensive rating. Okay, cool. But we expected that the team as a whole would kind of rally around the fact that Love came back and maybe would produce at a higher level and be in a place that maybe just this week they're barely missing the 10 seed instead of now the way things are going, they could have the worst record in the NBA by the end of the season. What that tells me is, yes, Love has had some positive influences occasionally with his teammates where he has maybe helped his fellow players out in respect to how to read a defense occasionally, but he's not playing on the court. And as much as people want to rag on Sexton about how he's a little bit of a ball hog at times, if you watch the games offensively, is there more Sexton could do? Is there more stuff he could do defensively too? Yes. But he plays extremely hard for 42 minutes as much as he can. There was an instance in the Pacers game just last night where Allen out-rebounded Sexton just because he was in better position, but Sexton still would have gotten the rebound if Allen wasn't there. That's the other guy on this team that is right now the only other veteran presence technically, because I don't know who else the team turns to besides Sexton. And in my note here, you brought up the albatross. I'll keep going with the water analogy here. The team is rudderless with Love on the floor and with Love on this team. He doesn't provide any stability at the 4. He doesn't provide any additional leadership defensively, and his shooting is down this year because of his injuries. Most importantly, his injuries have dictated whether or not he should still play for Cleveland or a team in the future. When I posed this question to you, you kind of made a comment that you weren't sure how much would be left in the tank with Love. I think that he could be a great bench player somewhere else. When you look at all the scenarios of trade scenarios with other teams, those organizations aren't trading for Kevin Love for him to be a starter. That's how lost the Cavs are right now with him on the team. Everybody else in the NBA sees Kevin Love as a backup as a bench player, if they don't at the end of this season realize and move forward with Garland and Sexton as their primary offensive weapons, they can draft whoever they want to draft. But right now, looking at this team and how it's constructed with your backcourt being the primary offensive weapons, and they need to build around that. That is how they will be able to move into future success. It's not with Kevin Love. Yes, I might watch his retirement ceremony because I'd be curious, but that's going to be a few years from now. And you're right. At this point, there could be a lot of people soured on him. It's not just about the fact, for me, that he's had some injuries. It's what he's also done and said this year and previous years. Yes, he's helped out in the community some. He's been a positive guy at times. But you said something that I thought was really important, Adam. It seems like he seems to speak a little bit out of both sides of his mouth, and he doesn't really know what he wants. If he doesn't want to play for Cleveland, he needs to tell them, I'm not coming here anymore. You can pay me the money. Dan Gilbert has the money. I'm not going to be here. Get rid of me however you want, but I'm not going to play anymore. He hasn't inspired anyone else on this team. Their longest winning streak, I think, is 4 games this season, and that was without Kevin Love. And when Kevin Love came back, they didn't go on any type of winning streak. There's so many other things we could break down and say this or that, or, but he has the potential. We could say 40,000 other things about Kevin Love, but we're a Cavs basketball podcast. And the point of the podcast is to see and talk about the Cavs and how they're moving in a direction or not, or whatever. But most importantly, we want this team to win. They are not winning with Kevin Love, period.
I care about every player in the league because they're a human being and I'm a compassionate person. I care about every player on our team for the same reasons, but also because they wear wine and gold. They wear the Cavs uniform. And I am a Cavs fan. I have a Cavs podcast with you. So where I ride or die, Kevin, is with the Cavs organization, with this team. And yeah, I'm critical of them too. But what are we here for? We're here for winning basketball. That's really what we're here for. We're not just here for basketball. We're here for winning basketball. And there's only a certain amount of time that it's acceptable to not be winning. Him coming back should have been a net gain, not a net negative or net loss. In the Portland game alone, fearthesword.com had a great statistic that I pointed out to you, which is that the Cavs were outscored by 45 points in the 26 minutes that Love was on the court in the Portland game. That's a disgusting statistic, and it proves it's not an aberration, right? It's what we've been seeing in most of these games, except for the Bulls game where he had kind of a quiet 24, 25 minutes and scored about 15 points. And I commented to you, he plays like that, he's an asset to this team. He goes out there and tries to score 20 or more, and he doesn't really rotate on defense and doesn't really get any offense or defensive rebounds. What is he there for? At the end of the day, I look at a person in Kevin that I've never seen him evolve towards a positive. So I've never seen him lose weight and gain muscle and, strength over the season, come in more formidable under the basket. He just kind of shows up. He's got the skill set that he's been born with. Not saying he doesn't work hard or practice, right? I don't see an effort from him to really alter himself and his game to stay kind of relevant. I've seen that from other players, LeBron being one, and he is a freak of nature, but he still did it. I know I mentioned earlier to you privately, Tristan Thompson, I think he added muscle and weight and tried to become, more of a presence under the basket. You've got Sexton and Garland. They saw after the first couple of seasons in the league that they needed to bulk up and be able to muscle their way through the game. To me, Kevin, all of that is gone, and now he's just a shooter. And I've never seen a guy that would work hard to gain those things back. So I don't really have a lot of hope that he has anything left in the tank. He's got to prove to himself in this offseason, I suppose, that he can come back stronger and at 100%. That would be the one benefit of the doubt that I would give him. If he's being honest and he truly is only 60 or 70% right now, then we owe it to him to see what 100% looks like. And we will see it because we cannot move him before the beginning of next season. But if it's more of this into next season, this is a poison that we cannot survive longer than maybe the first few weeks. Otherwise, it's going to be more of this and there's going to be upheaval in the locker room, because how do you want to run your offense? And how do you play 4-on-5 when you know he's a huge liability on the other side of the court? I have always wanted Kevin Love to succeed, but he's not my friend or my family member. I'm a fan of the team he plays on, and I want what's best for him and the team while he's here. And as far as what he's done for us in the past, yeah, I have happy memories, and I'm being a smart aleck. I'll probably check his retirement, but it makes me less interested when there's this much drama behind a player. And when I think back on the Kevin Love moments as a Cavalier, I'm going to be thinking of these just as much as I'm going to be thinking about the big moments, the positive moments. Because frankly, he's been injured a lot, and it's been tough. Like even before this round, when LeBron and Kyrie were here, he was injured a lot then. It's difficult to fall in love with a player when you never get to see him play.
The final seconds.
This coming week, the Cavaliers will play the Celtics at home and then the Wizards and Nets away. So, I'll ask you for a third week. Do you think they'll win any of these games?
Yeah, it's the last week of the season. Maybe they go on a 3-game winning streak and almost match their 4-game winning streak from earlier in the season. That'd be a nice little cherry on top. I know the Celtics are a bit of a basket case of a team right now because Jaylen Brown got hurt. They could maybe steal a victory against the Celtics. That would be kind of cool. It would also be kind of fun if they beat the Nets, just because they would have gone 3-0 against the Nets for the season, which would have been funny. So maybe we could talk about a win next week. Fiondu Kabengele has put together some solid games this week. The Cavs have been able to get some quality play out of these lower roster spots.
I don't know if I have a favorite. I would say there are 4 players that have stood out to me this season, and they all kind of equally have surprised me, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do next season. Hopefully they'll still be around. So you've got Dean Wade being one, then you have Lamar Stevens, Damian Dotson, and Dylan Windler. And I know Windler is maybe on the cusp of that. I think the Cavs have always said that they had bigger plans for him and he just can't stay healthy. But for me, I always saw him as a bottom of the roster spot guy. He maybe would get out there 5-7 minutes a game most nights unless it was garbage time. Somebody like Dean Wade, I didn't expect him to have the shooting touch that he's had this season. There's a lot of promise there, and he seems to have some basketball IQ. He rotates to the basket and covers his position well. He's a good defender. There's a lot of upside with Dean Wade. He's not going to stay a lower roster spot for long. And if he doesn't move up with the Cavs, he won't stay with the Cavs for long, and he'll go to somewhere else and be more featured there. We all know, we've talked at length in other podcasts, everybody knows that we love Lamar Stevens. It's been a little bit of a shame at the limited minutes that he's seen over the last several weeks. I would have played him more than what we've seen him out there. But when he's gotten out there, I think he's taken advantage of his opportunities. I'm really excited to see what he does next season. I really hope that they believe in him, because I know that they've got a Okoro and they have Prince. They have other options at his position, but I think he's versatile with his skills and could possibly rotate to other positions if need be. Shooting guard, point guard, those things. The NBA is so fluid now with that. I don't think that should be a reason to not see him go out there. And then Damian Dotson, you got to love the scrap of that guy. He's stuck with the team this long. Again, I'd like to see him out there a little more, but I think he adds something defensively, and when he's on, he's a good shooter. The Cavaliers coach Lindsay Gottlieb will be returning to women's college basketball as the new USC head coach after this season ends. Apparently, USC really pushed hard to hire her. What impact do you see this move will have on the team next season?
So I think the team is going to miss Lindsay Gottlieb a lot. I think she has been a positive influence for a lot of these players, especially the young core. I know that Sexton and Garland and Okoro have all spoken a lot about how much they enjoy her as a coach. And I know that Bickerstaff himself was very complimentary of how she sees the game of basketball and how she kind of perceives what's important in certain plays and games. I'm really happy for her, though, because I think that USC is going to get a really good coach. She clearly was a phenomenal coach before she came to the Cavs, and I was kind of surprised they even landed her. I'm hopeful for her that she gets all the success that she can. I will be curious to see how the Cavs coaching staff moves forward into next season and who all is there. That's something you and I will definitely monitor. Hopefully nobody else leaves at this moment is my thinking, but we can talk about that in other future podcasts. As we mentioned, Luka Doncic hit Sexton below the belt and got tossed in the second Dallas game. We agree that this was a punk move. How would you have reacted, and are you proud of Sexton for not making it a thing?
23 or 4-year-old me probably would have pushed him, or I don't know, at least gotten in his face. 37-year-old me, I think I would have acted the way that Sexton did. And it's one of the reasons that I've appreciated Sexton's play. He's not hot-headed out there. If a team goads him or eggs him on, he usually has something clever in response, or, he'll stand up to the situation. It's like that many weeks ago, there was that play where being jabbed at from behind, and he didn't take it. He walked up and got in the guy's face and said, "What?" Sexton, I think, is a savvy basketball player in these situations. He knows when to defend himself and when to leave it alone. Luka had made a mistake in that situation. In the replay, you can tell that the whole situation got the better of him. He didn't like the physical contact that Sexton was giving him underneath, and so he reeled around and slapped him basically in response. I think it was a weak move. It was a punk move. He should have some introspection about why he would think that that's an acceptable response to do to anyone. But I think Sexton's response was perfect, because if you know the game, you knew, hey, buddy, see ya, have fun. It was a nice moment for us as Cavs fans, because often we feel that the refs are not really looking out for our players the way they seem to do it for others, that we get kind of crazy calls our way and it never seems to go on the other side. In that regard, that was great. What was sad was that the outcome really didn't help. It didn't change the game. It didn't help us win to see Luka leave. And right now, I'm desperate for wins, baby. Give me those W's. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining us as always. We'll be back next week for episode 14.
It was nice to talk Cavs basketball. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and other places like Spotify. Talk to you all next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go, Cavs!